Hey, Frog fans, welcome in to another episode of Frogs Insider. Jamie Plunkett here with Melissa Treebwasser, as always. And you guys spoke so highly of him the last time he was on the show. We just had to bring him back, Anthony Alabi. Round four, round two. Anthony, thanks so much for coming back and joining us today.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Very happy that you're here to talk a little bit more frog ball with us. Folks, you know, we are part of the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Network. You can find us wherever you get your podcast just by searching Dave Campbell's or Frogs Insider. Either one. If you're searching Dave Campbell's, you'll get our show along with a podcast for every D1 program in the state of Texas. That's 13 different shows all in one feed over at the Dave Campbell's College Podcast Network. If that's too much, Frogs Insider has just our shows. It's got the indie drills when they happen. It's got Melissa's previews when they happen as well. Some other fun stuff in that feed. And you can always go and see our faces over on the YouTube channel at Frogs Insider as well. So wherever you're getting your show, we're glad that you found us. Leave a rating and a review. And guys, we got a lot to talk about on this show. We really do. Because TCU has made a coordinator change at offensive coordinator. They've got a bowl coming up. Just take a moment.
Yeah, do a slow clap it out.
Else? No.
Hey, listen, okay. You will get a full speed clap from me. I am fired up about
I
this.
read up on this, and my wife was like, "What are you doing? You're literally puffing up as you're reading it." I'm like,
"You ready to get back in there? Ready to get back in the trenches?"
I was like, "Yes."
Let's talk about it, Anthony, because the last time you were on the show, we spent a significant amount of time talking about the offensive line, a position you played at TCU, a position that has been a point of frustration, I think, for the majority of TCU fans for the last several years now. And you kept on, and you were very assertive in your stance that regardless of whether the run game is successful to the point that we want it to be successful, you cannot abandon it. You have to continue running the football. You have to continue trying to assert yourself physically along the offensive line. And now we're going to get into Gordon Sammis a little bit more here in a second. But now you have an offensive coordinator who was an offensive line coach, who understands kind of the fundamental role and responsibility of that unit and has coached it at a really high level. When you, without knowing much more about Gordon Sammis or without talking fully about Gordon Sammis at this point, just how refreshing is it for you to know that there's an opportunity to see much improved offensive line play moving forward for TCU?
10 out of 10, no notes. That is the person that we needed at that position. When I talked about it before, and I understand I was pretty animated and assertive about it, but that was for good reason. Lately I've been calling these Texas high school football playoff games, right? And what you notice is there was this period where everything was volleyball, where people wanted to kind of throw the ball all the time. It was throw, throw, throw. Scores were 35, and of course it's exciting. But in the grand scheme of it, and I underline scheme, when it comes to football, running the ball is paramount, in my opinion. I believe that you have to establish a strong run. One, it does things for you physically. It establishes your dominance as an offense. It's your way to tangibly hit the defense in the mouth and allow them to know we're here, we're coming, right? Two, it's a changeup. It sets up your offense to pass. Whether it's like RPOs or play action, it helps to set you up. It forces the defense to have to cover both. And if you're balanced, it's exceptional. If you at least have something on the run side, even if you're not good at it, and it is kind of a threat, it forces defenses to hesitate. And as we know in sports, as the higher you go in levels, that half a second, quarter of a second, it all makes a difference. And when you have the ability to do that, it allows your offense to open up and become dynamic. So I think that alone, just that kind of definition of what it takes to have a successful offense and a balanced offense, this hire gets me very excited because you have someone who has been in the trenches, not just someone who's coached. There's nothing like a guy who's been there and understands, hey, I know you're saying you're having a hard time getting to the second level and blocking that linebacker. I know you can do it because I did it. And you can definitely do it. You're more talented, you're younger, you're blah, 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 all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's someone who understands the nuances of what it takes to play the position. And it is a special position. It's not something that obviously we call other players skill players. I was always offended by that as an offensive lineman. The amount of things that we have to kind of calculate, process, and do within a certain amount of time, that's a skill. And that is a skill that and not only it translates to a couple of things. It's like the run game is one thing, pass pro is an art. I've always seen it like that. If you put pass pro, you put Michael Parsons against an offensive tackle who is like just let's skip time here and go against like Jonathan Ogden. You put that to slow-mo and put it to jazz, that is art. So at the end of the day, when you have someone that understands that and understands that there's a balance and a need for both, it opens up and completely changes the look of your offense, which I think is something that TCU needs and has needed desperately.
I'm curious
for sure. Yeah.
I'm curious, Anthony, you talk about how, having someone that's been there, kind of done that from that position. Do you think that greatly impacts how he develops a playbook too? Just having such an intrinsic knowledge of the position, like how he designs plays, how the timing of those plays, and what like the execution needs to look like in order to do what he wants to do.
Absolutely. And, right now, just off the cuff, they don't have an offensive line coach hired. And I think it's because he's going to handle both. I think he's going to do that. That's where he comes from. And I think when you're building an offensive scheme, you build it from the inside out. And it starts with the offensive line. And if he is that wide zone offense from Alex Gibbs, if he's in, and that's what he's going to run here, and that's what he wants to establish, it's going to take a few key factors. One, which we've gotten in the transfer portal, which I love, Noah McKinney, but it starts with an offensive line that is athletic, an offensive line that can move laterally, and it takes a running back that has vision. Vision being the ability to see those cutbacks, the ability to stretch the field and allow the cutback lanes to develop naturally and not necessarily look for them. But because of all the push, because of the backside cutoffs, it's suddenly like, I know we're supposed to be pushing C gap, pushing B, C gap, but all of a sudden, oh, hey, it's open because everything is flushed that way. So when you have a guy that comes in as an offensive line coach and becomes an offensive coordinator, his first thought isn't, what am I going to get the quarterback to do? What am I going to get the running back? It's what do I want my offensive line to do to this defense? Once you have that, now we've established, okay, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And I think when you come in with that philosophy, there's nothing but success. And it's why you've seen him succeed where he's gone. I mean, in every statistical category, UConn has outperformed TCU's offense. And that's for good reason. I mean, you look at them, their offense had 25-90 passing, and I think it was like 25-47 running or vice versa. That you can't, that's the definition of balance. Mm-hmm. 1,000-yard receiver, 1,000-yard passer, 28 touchdowns and 1 interception for their quarterback. I mean, how much would we have loved 1 interception this year?
Right.
So when you look at those numbers and you look at what he brings in the efficiency, the discipline, the physicality that he's used to, I think it is a breath of fresh air and an absolute facelift to this, more than a facelift, a reconstructive surgery of this offensive team that is needed. And I think if we had this kind of scheme, and I don't mean to kind of bloviate here, but if we had this, I don't think you lose some of these games that we lost.
You can use bloviate when you use it correctly, and you used it correctly, so you are allowed. I'm going to give you bloviate into the vocab for this episode. If you can use it again,
my God,
I'm going to be really impressed. So the pressure is on.
We'll have a bloviate counter in the corner.
Yeah, we'll get on. I'll get right on that and post, just editing your little bloviate counter for you.
In the corner, it's like, what is bloviate?
Yeah, I'm
if you listen to the full, if you listen to the full episode, drop a bloviate in the YouTube comments, please.
Yes, that is absolutely the word people need to comment. Bloviate. If you spell it wrong, it's okay.
That's okay.
Just try your best.
It's given.
BLOVIATE.
Nailed it.
Boom.
Yeah,
got him.
That's just showing off tonight. Everybody
use it in
tonight.
a sentence, please. No.
Well, you already did. So
yeah. How am I gonna have to top that?
Oh my God.
Okay, so let's back up just for a hair though, and
sure.
talk about why Gordon Sammis is coming to TCU to be the offensive coordinator. That's because Kendal Briles has left. He took the job at South Carolina. He's going to be the OC there. He is taking Randy Clements with him, who was the assistant offensive line coach. AJ Ricker is still on TCU staff as the offensive line coach. But you have a guy in Kendal Briles who, Melissa, I thought you said it really well the last time we were on, last time we recorded. There were going to be people at TCU who just never gave him a chance because of his name. There were going to be people who were going to be contrarian and like him just because other people didn't. And then there was going to be the majority in the middle who just wanted to see good football and detail-oriented football and successful offensive football play. And for the majority of Kendal Briles' time at TCU, I think there was a level of inconsistency that really got people frustrated, especially like we've already talked about in the running game. A lot of pressure was put on Josh Hoover these past 2 seasons to execute at an incredibly high level consistently. And I think when you look at, Anthony, you were talking a little bit about the differences between TCU and UConn's offenses this year. A 28-1 touchdown to interception ratio tells me that quarterback, A, made really good reads pretty much all the time, but B, wasn't asked to do too much. Right. Like he was not put in situations where he was having to force throws. He was not put in situations where he was throwing it 50 or 60 times a game, because he had a really good balanced offense. He had good tight ends, right? He had an offensive line that kept him upright, didn't force him out of the pocket too much. And that wasn't always the case for Josh these last 2 seasons. He was having to run a lot. He was having to make throws on the run, force some things, throw it 50 times a game. And so I think there was a level of frustration, even when you look back statistically at TCU's offense these last 3 years and say, well, the numbers weren't necessarily bad, right?
Yeah.
It was an above average to pretty good offense for the most part. The red zone struggles were pretty well documented, very good at racking up yards. But the reality is, this season, I think it kind of came to a head where, hey, the defense was making pretty good strides and the offense wasn't carrying its end of the deal for a lot of this. We talked about it after the BYU game, Anthony, that just the offense never got off the ground. And so there was a change made. Kendal saw an opportunity to go to South Carolina. I think there's no doubt that the Jeremiah Donati connection at South Carolina is a major part of why this got done. But Melissa, I did want to clarify something from the last time we talked, because last time on the show, we mentioned, as Jeremy Clark has mentioned, as Stephen Johnson has mentioned, anyone who's covered TCU has mentioned, the Kendal Briles contract was coming up, because we were working off of his initial 3-year deal when he signed at TCU. Figured, all right, well, his contract's going to end around in February. TCU wasn't going to re-sign him and let him go. Learned last week that wasn't necessarily the case. He did get an extension this past offseason. TCU didn't publicize that. Nobody in the media was notified that. We didn't get traditionally, when even assistants get extensions, we get a little bit of just a press release, a little note from the media director to say, hey, this has happened. Just so you know, here's the kind of what they've been extended through. If it's a public school, you'll get details on the contract. Obviously, TCU is not that. But it was really interesting that we didn't get any kind of notification that Briles had been extended this past offseason. It happened prior to Mike Buddie's tenure. And so there was a buyout in his contract that was waived in order for him to go to South Carolina, is my understanding. So I want to clarify that, because there's been a lot of chatter about that on social media, on Horn Frog Blitz as well. Kendal Briles was under contract for the next 2 years. There was a buyout to his contract. My understanding is that TCU waived that buyout in order to free him up to go to South Carolina a little bit more smoothly. So I know that we've talked about alternatives, realities there for a little bit, Melissa, but we were working with the information that we had, and it's good to have some more clarity on that now.
Yeah, and I think it's. I do not want to stir the hornet's nest here, but I think it needs to be said.
Do it.
TCU not announcing a contract extension, coming off of a disappointing season with an offensive coordinator that carries a name that makes people feel a certain kind of way in Fort Worth, is very telling.
That part.
Very telling to me. And I think that, we all know what it's been like the last couple of years. There was a group of people that are big supporters and big decision makers outside of the direct university structure, but have say in things that go on, that were upset with how the Gary Patterson tenure ended. They have a right to be upset with that. A lot of those people were willing to jump back on board after the run in 2022. And Sonny Dykes made the decision to bring in Kendal Briles, using a lot of the capital he had earned. And last name aside, at the end of the day, this team never competed for a Big 12 championship with Kendal Briles as the OC, and never even got close. I mean, you're looking at a 5-7 season and back-to-back years where by early November, they were pretty much out of the running of making it to Arlington. And so I'm going to say, and this is also going to get me roasted on the board, I'm sure, if people had a problem with the Briles name being associated with TCU, I respect that they had a problem with that. I understand there are people that for whatever reason, what we don't know, what we do know, what we think we know, or just from a rivalry perspective, seeing Art Briles at TCU was going to rub a certain group of TCU people the wrong way, no matter what. There are people that I think would have bought in to that name if they had won, right? Because sports washing is a real thing. And I think that all could be forgiven if you're winning Big 12 championships. And then, like we talked about, there were a group of people that were going to just be counterculture regardless because they like poking the bear of people that had a problem with it. As the lone female voice and someone who's been in coaching, I will maintain that it's really hard to believe that a coaching staff wasn't at least aware that there were issues. And so for female TCU fans that had a problem with, even if Kendal was completely innocent, which he was never, I mean, none of them ever were, but we also know how that goes. But you still just feel uncomfortable with it. I think that's a reasonable thing. And I think that other TCU fans need to accept that. But at the end of the day, if his last name was Jones or Smith, we're looking at someone who never got the job done at a high level, that produced an offense that produced a lot of stats, but also had a lot of empty calories, and TCU didn't win. And, the offensive coordinator is not directly responsible for every interception, and they're not directly responsible for the offensive line, the running game not being up to snuff. But at the end of the day, they're the coach of that unit. And if that unit isn't meeting expectations, then they're part of the reason that it's not meeting expectations. And so I think that from a fan base perspective, this is the best case scenario. Kendal, who is very good friends with Sonny Dykes, and Sonny Dykes has known his entire life, gets to leave with a clean slate. He's not fired. His contract, he's not a lame duck coach. He gets to go get a fresh start somewhere where that name isn't going to carry quite as much animosity. And he's got a track record of having a level of success for sure. And at a program that probably doesn't have the same expectations that TCU does relative to their conference and their place within it. And then the fan base gets to not have to care about it anymore. And that to me is a giant win. I don't have to care. I don't have to think about whether or not I have a problem with it. I don't have to think about the fact that there's pictures of Art Briles and TCU gear. None of that has to impact my day-to-day existence whatsoever. And that to me is overwhelmingly positive thing. And now if we can get an offense that fits more of what we think this team needs to be successful in this version of the Big 12, even better. So I am glad to close this chapter. I am appreciative for some of the records and some of the great things that Josh Hoover, I'm appreciative for his career, what he was able to accomplish, and how Kendal Briles helped him put himself on the national stage. But I'm just really glad we get to move on, and I'm excited about a future that does not include that being a controversy among our fan base.
Yeah. I mean, I think we got it, right? Like, that's the end of the podcast. Like, that was amazing.
No, we got to keep talking for like 40 minutes. Yeah. But
that was incredible.
We
get to.
For like 5 minutes, guys. Come on now.
And that's turning us around upside down.
Exactly right. So, look, I think, Melissa, I mean, you said it so well. I don't need to repeat any of it, but I do agree that I think for the folks who had issue with it, it always was a thing that just kind of lingered, regardless of the amount of success that TCU was having. I know people very close to me who canceled their season tickets when that hire was made, right?
Or their podcasts.
Parker and Grant.
Bring Purple Theory back.
Purple Theory. Come on back. But no, there was a visceral reaction. There was a real reaction from a section of TCU's fan base. And like you said, it was legitimate. I'm not one to tell other people how to feel about things. And so, if that was a way that people felt, then that's the way that people felt. It took me a while to adjust to having a Briles on staff. Yeah. But in the same way that it took time to adjust to Kaz Kazadi being on staff as well. I mean,
Carlton Buckles.
Kendal Briles is far from the only, mid-teens Baylor staffer to have crossed through these last 4 years under Sonny Dykes. But the last name, I think, tags him in a way that's just different than some other folks who have come through the program and some folks that are still with the program, frankly. But like you said, he is gone now. He is at South Carolina. I think the style of offense that he wants to run on his best day will be much better suited for a quarterback like Lenora Sellers. But this is not a South Carolina podcast, and we do not have to get into any of that. we get to talk more about Gordon Sammis, the new offensive coordinator for TCU, who was down here on Sunday, is going to spend a couple days in Fort Worth getting to know the rest of the staff and the team before he heads back up to Storrs, Connecticut, to coach UConn in the Fenway Bowl against Army, I believe. He is the interim head coach after head coach Jim Mora took the Colorado State job, and he's going to fulfill those duties before he gets down to Fort Worth more permanently. Gordon Sammis has been at UConn for the last 4 years. The last 2 as the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive line coach for 3 years. He overlapped in 2024, taking both of those responsibilities on. Before UConn, he was at William & Mary, at Virginia Military Institute. He spent a couple years at Columbia as the offensive line coach and recruiting coordinator, so he's got some recruiting chops as well. And as you mentioned, Anthony, he played the position at Virginia and then went back to Virginia as a GA once his playing career was over. So this is a guy who has been embedded in offensive line play and offensive line coaching for the last 15 years
and
or so.
O-line at UVA, like that's a smart dude.
Yeah.
That's a dude that's got some brain power for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Really sharp dude.
Absolutely.
And I think, Anthony, you've already talked a lot about what he brings, but I would love to hear more from you on, because everybody just kind of talks about offensive line play as if it's some sort of monolithic thing. But there are so many different ways to operate as an offensive line, depending on what kind of scheme you want to run as an offense, based on what your goals are as an offense.
Mm-hmm.
In what you've been able to glean from what you've seen from Gordon Sammis and from what TCU has experienced the last 3 years, what's the difference in the way that you've seen maybe UConn's offensive line operate, and what can TCU fans look forward to from that kind of perspective?
Well, I think what you're going to find with Coach Sammis is a run first mentality. I think that he's going to look to establish the run, and that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be super successful, but establishing the run is something that lets the defense know and shows that this is available. We're not a one-dimensional offense. We do both. And I think when you look at efficient offensive lines, and like you said, it's not a monolithic thing, but there are certain characteristics that come with that wide zone offense that comes with that, the offensive line types that execute that type of offense well. And I think it's athleticism, the ability to move laterally. I think intelligence, double teams are a big part of that. They want to get the front moving. They want to have a lot of ball movement. They want to stretch the field horizontally. They want to kind of pull defenses out of position in order to kind of take advantage with the changeup of hitting it downfield. Now, the difference in that, obviously, when it comes to philosophies, we could say, yeah, that was kind of the same thought for the running game that they've had. Sure, execution is the big thing there, because we can talk about it all day long and say, oh yeah, for sure, that's what we want to do. But if you continue to, okay, we're gonna establish the run, and then you run it a couple of times, you get 2 yards, you fall short of your 4 yards per carry, and you don't like it, then you abandon it after a series. That's not doing that. That's not establishing the run. Establishing the run is sometimes having to go in there and, like I said last time on the podcast, run power 6 times in a row and force it to happen. And yeah, you get 3, you get 4. Cool. Now we're going to go back to the passing game. All right, now we're going to go back to the run game. That's balance. That's forcing. And one of them might work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you use it all the time. Just because you have a weapon doesn't mean you pull it out and you use it every single time. You have to hide it sometimes. You have to hold it, and then you go back. So I think that's what he's going to bring. He's going to bring that balance that UConn has, that we saw with their stats and everything else. But he's going to bring a philosophy that is a change from what we've had, which is those running backs are going to become more valuable. Obviously, because of what we've been doing, they'll probably be used in space more. We'll probably have a lot more dynamic kind of movement. But the offensive line play, it's going to be consistent now. I feel like there's going to be a lot more consistency, not necessarily with personnel. Obviously, Noah McKinney coming in is going to be a big thing, and that'll be fun and nice to see kind of the offensive line. Anything that we're losing this year, we can bring it back through the portal when it opens up. But I feel like you're going to have an offensive line that's now knows what they're doing and what their first task is at all times, and then from there, pull the game plan out from that central core. But now you're just there's an actual, and obviously there was one before, but it feels like there's an actual plan. There's an actual, game philosophy that we want to kind of put together and have that'll, I think, will make the TCU fan base very happy. I don't know about you. I know this is Homer stuff, but I miss the days of LT. I miss seeing a running back, Lonta Hobbs and Robert Merrill and the guys that I played with, and having it's just like TCU has a pipeline of running backs. Like, how many guys you got back there? And it was awesome because no matter what happened, the offensive line stayed consistent. We knew what our job was, and you had these rushers that would just blow by for 200 yards a game consistently. It wasn't something that happened every now and then. Even if we threw the ball really well, we were still hitting over 200 yards in rushing a game. So I love the fact that he's coming in and that's his history. I hope that's what he's installing. I know Sonny Dykes has, they're going to meld on what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, this to me is a very positive change. I think it's something that's going to add consistency, and hopefully he stays for a while. And I think if he can, and we can and establish this new tradition, so to say, of being the team, kind of an echo of what we were in our era, I think you're looking at a really bright future for TCU in the Big 12.
Jamie, I'm really curious your thoughts on, because one thing we haven't really talked about is how unusual it is for a head coach that's so well known for offensive philosophy going so far out his coaching tree and out of his comfort zone with this hire. I mean, to me, that was one of the more, we started seeing the names. We saw the hot board over on Horned Frog Blitz, and it seemed like there were some very obvious ways to go. And this one was so outside of the expectation. And I mean, what it says about how Sonny's feeling about, his future, or what it means that the Big 12 is moving toward.
So I think one of Sonny's really overlooked talents as a head coach is identifying coaching talent. If you look back over his history, even all the way back to his time at Cal, which just on paper was not terribly successful. Obviously, he was fired after 3 years. But, Jake Spavital was his offensive coordinator, the last OC he hired at Cal. And Spav has had a pretty good career calling offensive plays since then. I mean, he's Baylor's OC right now. They had a really good offensive year with Sawyer Robertson and a couple of their running backs down there. And just really talented, really successful offense. Garrett Riley was a position coach that he pulled out of App State to come be his OC at SMU. Rhett Lashley was at UConn when Sonny pulled him out to come to SMU with him. And so he has this, you talk about Brian Carrington, who's the DB coach at Arizona State. Sonny Dykes identified him. Rashad Samples was on Sonny Dykes' staff back at SMU. Now he's getting head coach chatter all across the country, probably for the 2026 cycle. Just all of these guys that you can come and name, where Sonny Dykes identified a coach that said, you have a real talent to do X, Y, and Z. Come do it for me, and I'll help you start to understand the bigger picture of coaching, and then you can go on and do bigger and better things. And so when we were putting the hot board together, based on some names that we had heard had been in contact with Sonny, it kind of fell into two different categories. The first category are, I don't like the word retread, but coaches that have been around for a while. Dana Holgerson's name came up. I know that they had a conversation with Dana. I know they had a conversation with Garrett Riley because he was out at Clemson after this year. And there was some kind of nostalgia around that 22 staff and just the camaraderie of that staff and how well everyone got along. And maybe we can recreate that. Maybe it wasn't lightning in a bottle. That ended up obviously going in a different direction. Spavital was another name that we heard. But then there was the other bucket, and the other bucket was kind of that, hey, maybe there's an up-and-comer. Maybe there's someone who's maybe a less familiar name that Sonny's going to do kind of what he does with this hire. And so there were the OC down at Texas State was a guy that we heard. Jonathan Brewer at Duke was another name that we heard. Shannon Dawson at Miami was another name that we heard. But at the end of the day, he settled on the guy who is a fundamentally sound executor of a position group, right? We've seen that with him and his offensive lines over the years, who has a capability of coaching a position group and calling plays, which he did in 2024, didn't do in 2025, and has, head coach material. I think Sonny Dykes likes hiring guys who want to go on to do bigger and better things. And when you have a coaching staff full of guys who are hungry to continue learning, hungry to succeed at the highest level possible for themselves, both in their current role and in the next role, you're going to get a group of guys together who all really want to pull in the same direction and have team success. So he went out, he talked to Gordon Sammis. He's been apparently keeping track of Sammis for quite a while as a potential, hey, I want him on my staff at some point kind of situation. And when he had that first conversation with Sammis, everything I've been told is that he knew pretty quickly that this was the guy he wanted to hire, regardless of the scheme difference. And there is a pretty dramatic scheme difference, going from an air raid to this more kind of pro style play action offense. But Sonny's going to let him have the reins, right? Sonny does not call plays. Sonny does not have, kind of a micromanagey oversight style of the offense, which I think South Carolina fans are going to realize here in the next year or so. And so he's going to come in, let Sammis do his thing, and, just allow him to make that offense his baby. And for everybody who keeps track of this team, I really hope it's successful.
Yeah, I think it was just such a fascinating choice, but I think that's an important point to note is Sonny Dykes' coaching tree is pretty damn impressive. And to be able to graft it to another style of offense is only going to further to cement his legacy if this works, right? Like that, I think that's going to be the fascinating thing is if this can be effective, all of a sudden you're seeing this shoot go off in a completely different direction that's only going to further what he's been able to do as far as elevating guys.
That's right. And also,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just saying to your point. I with the impressive coaching tree and his ability to evaluate talent, if he's talking to him and within the first few minutes he knew this is my guy and he's excited about it, let's do it. Green check, let's go. That is what I'm talking. Like, Phil Jackson gets a feeling about an assistant coach, you're taking that assistant coach. You know what I mean? So it's like Greg Popovich, like those guys like that, like when they know talent and they're talking to you and let's go with it. So I trust that. And for me, I do love the fact that it is a change in scheme, that it is a departure from what we've had. Because to your point, the offense has been good. It hasn't been great, right? And it hasn't done enough to be competing in November. So if we want to get to that point, then we need to make some changes. It's not necessarily smaller changes, but I think a scheme change, because you're right, that is too much pressure on Josh Hoover. That's to be able to have him go into every game thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to air this thing out all the time, no turnovers. That's a lot to put on somebody. And the game is on you and McAllister, and that makes you one-dimensional. And I think when teams played us, they knew that, and they would key on that, and it made it very difficult to find any success. Yes, that's how good it was. They found success even with teams knowing that. But imagine what can happen if we had a little more dynamics and nuance to our offense. I think it could really, there's a potential there for an explosive offense.
Look at the Iowa State game, right? Like that was a light box pretty much the entire game, and TCU still couldn't run against it. And that's how, Josh has a couple interceptions. Jeremy Payne has the fumble. I mean, there are things that go wrong, but at the end of the day, you should have an advantage in those situations running the football, and they could never really get the run game off the ground.
Right. Exactly. And when teams know that, where it's like, oh, I don't have to stack the box, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm not going to do it anyway.
It did, to their credit, look like TCU learned that lesson the last two games of the year.
Absolutely.
With the way they ran the ball against Houston and Cincinnati. But at the same time, what's the value of a lesson learned if it comes when you're already out of the Big 12 title race, right?
Well, here's the thing. To that point, oh, sorry. Go for it.
Go for it.
To that point, do you think that influenced the decision, seeing the success that they had those last, couple of games with the run game and saying, maybe this is something we should explore more of?
I think that the general frustration around the inability to consistently run was part of the reason for the change. I don't necessarily think that the last two games of this season, seeing that it could be successful, was a reason to say, all right, let's go out and get somebody who can do this way, because
Mhm.
I think Kendall and Ricker showed that they could get the offensive line in a position to do that for a couple games. And
Mhm.
um, at the same time, though, going back to the UCF game in 2024, going back to the Iowa State game this year or the Arizona State game this year, where it's like, hey, all you have to do with that two touchdown lead is run the football, and you couldn't do it. Those are the situations I think that led more to a change than being able to see a little success in the last 2 weeks, if that makes sense.
And the slow
Gotcha.
starts on the flip side
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
That was another
Where
thing that, yeah,
yeah, like
Like, oh, hey,
it's
nothing
always the
worse.
joke.
slow
Nothing worse
start.
than like first drive of the day, and it's just 3 incomplete passes,
Yeah.
and now you're punting, and you've taken 12 seconds
Yeah.
off the clock. Right? Just brutal.
The joke about
Just
the
brutal.
scripted drives, and getting the inverse of that for what was it, 4 out of 5 games where they didn't score in the first quarter. So
6
yeah,
out of 7. Yeah.
6 out of 7. Oh God, that's even, and it's also 6. For those of you not watching on YouTube, you missed out. Yeah, I mean, I think that. Well, and I think Josh, like I'm very curious in this new era of college football when you have a guy on your roster who is a significant earner. Like, is it like the pros? Like, are they having conversations and saying, Josh, we want you to stay? And Josh saying, this isn't the right offensive fit for me. And if I want to have a chance to go to the next level, like, I'm very curious what that looks like. Because it's one thing when it's a scholarship athlete. It's another thing when it's a guy making a couple of $1 million, right? And has become the face of your program.
True. And I think, with this new, and I mean, well, the way things are going now, it's semi-pro. This is a
Sure.
professional sport, transfer portal, free agency. This is the Wild West, I think, right now of this because everything is kind of forming. The way that all these things are put together, there's so many loopholes and different ways that teams can kind of get around and get the players that they want with money from designated certain places that are from here that we said would be from here, but it's really from, yeah. So it's weird. It's an interesting time right now, and to your point, I agree. Yeah, it's not the same as having just a scholarship quarterback who's getting free school, and then it's like this is what you're going to play because you're here for 4 years. Now it's just like, well, this is what I want, and if you don't give it to me, then I'll just go somewhere else. Or I can get paid more potentially, or I can get the offense I want and get paid, or look successful and get paid. So there's so many factors that tie into this now. It's difficult to understand that, but I do think it makes I think it's a key factor when you're looking for a coach to make the players happy as well. It's not necessarily like a top down model anymore.
It's not. It's not. I think though, if you're Sonny Dykes specifically in this position where you're thinking, hey, we've had relatively decent success, right? This is the first time since the 2014-15 seasons that TCU has won 8+ games in back-to-back years, right? So like there's
Mm.
a level of success these last 2 years, even if it's not up to expectation, that TCU hasn't experienced in a little bit outside of the 22 season. And so it's not, I don't know that he's necessarily feeling the, if I don't get this right, I'm going to get fired kind of pressure. But I think he was feeling like I need to make a decision that will distinctly and definitively put this program on a little bit of a better track. Because the reality is, and Melissa, we talked about this last time, they don't need major sweeping overhauls and changes to like get the program going in the right direction. This was hey, we need to make a couple of adjustments with how we pay attention to detail on offense, with how we recruit in the transfer portal, and maybe 2 or 3 more things behind the scenes. And if we can fix those things, then this thing's really going to take off, not just a linger around 8-9 wins every year kind of situation. So if I'm Sonny Dykes and I'm looking at where I am after 4 years as the head coach here, I'm not necessarily making a hire that would please the students that are currently on the roster, because Josh has one more year, right? Eric McAllister's out the door after the bowl game. Caleb Earlarms or Bud Clark are out the door after the bowl game. I think that this hire probably does make a couple running backs want to stick around and kind of see what's going on. But at the same time, you just signed a 4-star running back in your high school class who, set all sorts of records at his high school, which was a pretty potent producer of running backs over the years. And so I think the hire is more along the lines of, hey, what's best for the program? And then if I'm Sonny Dykes, I'm thinking I can get the players on board, right?
Yeah.
Especially the guys on offense. Like I know these guys. I have a relationship with these guys. He spent a lot of time with Josh over the last couple of weeks as all of this stuff was kind of in limbo. So I'm sure there were conversations about, hey, we're going to go in this direction. You know, this is kind of what the expectations would be. I'm sure Josh has had an opportunity to talk to Gordy, as they call him at this point. But I don't know that the threat of a player leaving would necessarily dictate the hire. Like it maybe would. I mean, just the NFL is such a different beast, right? Because everybody's under these really firm contracts, but
It's just the evolution of what
yeah,
we're doing now. I feel like,
yeah.
you know, I just, I don't think it's the threat of a player leaving necessarily. I think it's more of, does the money play a factor now in the player having a bigger voice as to what they feel could be successful or not?
Mm,
And for me, I
100%.
think,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, obviously money makes a difference, right? It's, I don't know if this is like appropriate or not, but I know that I remember this. There was a player that I played with in Miami, and he was really funny, and he was under contract, and it came time to kind of decide some things and figure it out. And he was staying quiet, and he was, you know, stonewalling the front office. And finally, when it came down to it, he went in the office and he goes, "Look, I got a stripper mentality. Money makes me move." And you know, it becomes one of those things where and my wife loves that. She uses it in like her business meetings, and it's just hilarious. But it's true. It's
I'm
like
gonna use
at
that
the
in my
end,
classroom.
have to.
I don't think you
You
should.
have to.
I don't think you
Probably not,
should.
probably
I
not.
don't think you
Totally
should. Not with
appropriate.
those,
It's
not
totally
with those
fine.
private
Don't worry
school
about
kids.
it. Private school kids love that. No.
Oh, they do.
But I think at the end of the day, money does when you start introducing money into into the equation, I think it makes a difference. And I don't feel that it can be something that's like, oh yeah, let's talk about scheme and like this how you feel about it is irrelevant. You're our player. It has to mean something. If I'm paying you seven figures, you know, high six figures, 7 figures a year, and you're like, listen, I want to run the ball more because I don't want to throw it as much, I'm gonna pay attention
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
consequence of that is it holds for your program. I mean, he could leave, he could not be happy in it, you know, and then that falls back ultimately to the head coach. So I don't think we can dismiss the money issue. Um, but you're right, to your point. I don't think anybody's making sweeping changes because, you know, a player
Yeah.
wants to make these huge changes. But I do think it elevates their voice a bit in that room.
Fully agree with that. Absolutely. And like I mentioned, you know, Sonny and Josh have had a lot of conversations over the last couple of weeks, and there was a reason for that. Not just
Hmm.
because he's your really good quarterback, but you know,
Yeah.
you've invested a lot of dollars in that really good quarterback now. And you
Right.
want to make sure that if you're planning 2026, whether that includes him or not, you got to know now.
And knowing where his head is at, right? Because if
Yeah.
you know he's not happy, then we can be like, all right, we're gonna go forward anyway. But like, just keep in mind he could bounce. So
Mhm.
let's just keep that in
Yeah.
mind. But yeah, plays
And
a
all
plays a role.
and just to clarify for the listener, all of this is just a conversation around a hypothetical. We don't know
Hypotheticals, guys.
anything
Hypotheticals.
about
Don't panic.
Josh's thoughts for 2026. You know, there will be schools that come sniff around. I know that there already are schools that have come and sniffed around this year, just like there were last year. We know the Tennessee saga from this past offseason. So don't take this conversation as anything more than what it was. Just because there will be someone on Horned Frog Blitz that comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, they talked about it for 5 minutes. Is Josh really going to leave?"
Yeah. But this is just
Yeah.
the reality now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think as
Yeah.
college football fans, it's you have to remember that you love, like, I hate to use this, but you love the name on the front of the jersey more than you love the name on the back. And I think Josh has shown incredible loyalty to TCU, but if someone offers him life-changing money, then I mean, this is his last chance, right?
Yeah.
Like, it depends on what you think his pro futures are, but yeah, I mean, I think if you have a good player, you have to imagine that that good player is getting calls from schools that can pay good players. And so you hope that well, at the end of the day, what I hope is he does what's best for him. And I hope
For
that
sure.
that is staying at TCU, but I do not begrudge these kids taking advantage of the opportunities in front of them. And even if you hate to see the way that, like, I don't love that this is what's happening in the sport, but at the end of the day, like, if somebody offered me a ton of money to change jobs, okay, I mean, we'll talk. Let's have a
There's a
conversation.
whole
Like
separate
that's that's just
there's
the
a whole
way it
separate
is.
golf league based on that.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, it's like
Exactly.
so, and I think it points to, not to go super macro here, but it points to the bigger picture of this problem. The transfer portal is too open. I'm sorry. There needs to be some kind of restrictions on that. You can't just take a bag of cash and then be like, you know what, I'm going to go over here now. You don't just get to shop at the candy shop. And that's why I call it the Wild Wild West, because it just doesn't make sense right now. And I think 2 years from now, I'll be like, Jesus, remember when kids can just like go wherever they wanted and do it? There has to be a thing where, like, good, you took the money, you went to the school, great. You have to stay here for a year. You have to stay here for a couple of years. You know, there needs to be some kind of a little bit of a slowdown of all of this, you know, back and forth and running. It's nuts because the kid just, you know, you can go to a few different programs within your college career, which is wild. Especially with the money that's going around with PE coming in too. So
yeah, we can
I don't
talk
wanna have
Utah
that podcast.
LLC.
we can talk PE here in a second. I do want to note that we are starting to seek on the back end some of these like attempts to find stability and order through the way these contracts look.
Yeah.
So this offseason was the first time I really heard, not just from TCU, but from other places as well, about multi-year contracts that included buyouts, right? Because if you follow college basketball at all, there were a couple instances where a player agreed to a new NIL deal or a new rev share deal with the school, signed, and then a couple days later got a better offer from another school and ended up going there without any consequence. You know,
You can't do that.
and so I think that really spurred on athletic departments to kind of get it figured out here a little bit more. So we are starting to see schools take on that responsibility, because Lord knows the NCAA can't do that, to try and figure out how to just work their way back into a little bit more roster
Let's
stability.
have the government fix it.
That makes
There's
sense.
one
That
group
makes
of people.
sense. I mean, they've
less
done so
equipped.
well with America. Why not? You know, why not?
Jamie's gonna get really mad at us.
Next
We start
order of
derailing
business.
this.
NCAA.
Listen. I swear to God, I will record an episode of the Indy Drill this week, and I will talk about the SCORE Act and the other acts in Congress. I promise. For the folks who've been DMing me for the last 2 months saying, Jamie, please bring the Indy Drill back, I will do that. Crossover season's really hard, you guys, when there's football and basketball going on at the same time. And it turns out
every TCU basketball team is playing 2 home games a week minimum. I'm going to be at 7 TCU basketball games from Sunday to Sunday. Like that's, or 6, I think. That's ridiculous.
And
God
just to note, we signed up for this. We love this. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And
I would have it in the way that I got paid full time to do it. But other than
that'd
that,
be nice. That'd be great. Because I just got back from Waco yesterday, calling calling the CE King Vandergrift game. I'm like, that'd be nice. I like that.
Yeah, make a living.
For
Just
sure.
one job.
That'd be great.
Cool,
Just one.
Just one job would be nice.
No need for all the gigs.
But we love it, and we love TCU, and it's a joy to be at the games. It truly is, and we don't take it for granted. But
it will be a joy to be down in San Antonio, December 30th. For
Daytown.
TCU, USC, in the Alamo Dome, for TCU's
look at the
third
segue
bowl berth in the Alamo Bowl.
You professional.
I do what I can from time to time. Hey,
so good
listen,
at this.
we know we get pretty much every starter for TCU in this football game because they're all practicing. Right.
Yeah,
and why would you?
That's a blessing.
Why would you be out of practice? Right. When in the past, when we've seen folks depart the program, Dom Williams comes to mind. There was no practice presence, right? Because why would you risk injury even in practice if you're going to go take a big payday somewhere else? Josh Hoover's been practicing. Eric McAllister's been practicing. Jordan Dwyer, Caleb B-Larms-Orr, Bud Clark. All these folks are in line to play. Sonny Dykes said as much in his bowl press conference last week that he anticipates all the starters playing. Now, there might be 1 or 2 guys who hit the portal. If I know that there's just like we just talked, there's everybody's vulturing everybody. Everybody's hovering and lingering and messaging everybody at this point. So that part's still like the Wild Wild West. So there might be a guy or 2 that gets pulled into the portal before the bowl game at this point. But the anticipation is that all of TCU's starters and major players will play. Colton Deary looked us in our eyes, Melissa, after the last
Yes, he
home
did.
game and said, I'm playing, I've got more people to hit,
Yep.
right? Like,
That was his
by the
exact
way,
quote, which
Anthony, I'm sure you'll love hearing that from the starting center, right? I'm
Oh yeah,
gonna
man.
play. I've got more people to hit. Like, yeah, come on,
Oh
that's the
yeah,
mentality we need.
just perfect.
We don't know what's going to happen with USC's starters yet. Obviously, they just had a Bolitnikoff Award winner who may
it's okay if he wants to opt out.
say,
Fine with
I
that.
think I'm going to go take care
Yeah.
of my body and get ready for the
You
NFL
should.
draft.
You
Yeah,
absolutely
totally
should.
should.
You
Yeah.
should do
Sure,
that.
man.
That's a smart move on that guy's part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Mikhail Lemon, what else do you have to prove, really?
Yeah.
No,
Really, at this point.
save your body.
Not that we don't want to play the best, but also Mikhail Lemon doesn't need to play. So.
Every advantage you have, go
Yeah.
for it. If I'm
Right.
golfing and they say white tees, I'm like, yeah, let's do the white.
Sure,
I don't need to
come
play from
on.
the tips. This is
Yeah.
not necessary. I pay to play this. I don't get paid for this.
And you'll still, at the end of the day, right? And look, you guys are setting me up so beautifully here. Whether you played the tips or the white tees at Pebble Beach, you still played Pebble Beach, right? And whether or not Mikhail Lemon is suited up for USC on December 30th, you're still playing USC. It's one of the
100%.
most recognizable blue-blooded college football brands that ever has been or ever will be. And so there's an opportunity, I think, with this football game for TCU to really start to kind of flip it into that next gear again. And Anthony, this is where I'm really glad you're on the episode, because there was a game back in 1998 where TCU really flipped the script in a postseason game against USC, that Sun Bowl that we all remember.
What
And
is
it-
the Sun Bowl?
Exactly right. TCU was, I think, 6-5, wasn't anticipating a bowl berth. There were guys that were gone already for the season. Landry Burdine, one of the captains on the team, being one of them, comes back from a hunting trip and he has a voicemail from his head coach that says, "We're team meeting in 30 minutes. We're playing in the Sun Bowl," right? And
Oh, Burdine.
great guy.
The best.
But there was that game served as a turning point for TCU football, because they had not won a bowl game since 1957. They'd only appeared in 3 bowl games since that 1957 bowl win. And then the Sun Bowl happened. Now they've been in, I think it's 21 bowl games in the last 24 seasons. And it just feels like there's a little bit of a parallel with that game and this one against USC to say this could be a true, legitimate opportunity for TCU to put another feather in its cap and then once again kind of ladder up, right? They laddered up with the Sun Bowl in a really big way. Maybe it wouldn't be as big of a ladder up this time, but it could still be a jumping board to something a little bit better than what we've seen the last few years. Don't you guys think?
Absolutely. The parallels, like you said, I don't think USC likes to hear this, but it's like, thank you. You're where we grow from. You're the fertile ground in which we start our new eras. And as to your point, it's not going to be as big. I don't anticipate that it's this thing where it's like, oh, now the program is going to go on this historic run, but it's a seed. And I think we could use this game as a punctuation mark to the end of the season. You end on a positive. You have the ability to take this, and with a big win here, you can use that as momentum going into next season with the offensive coordinator changes you've made, with a fresh outlook, a new scheme, and find a way to go into next season. And this is just for me, but it almost feels like you go into next season and it's this idea of like, all right, fresh start, blank canvas, let's go. And it very much, I think the excitement that I felt coming in, just a year after that, and feeling how there was this idea, and we talked about this last time on the podcast, where it's like, we always thought we were the underdog. We never were like, oh, we're going into this game and we're going to win. Like, everybody's just like, oh, little TCU, that's cute. You guys are going to play again. It's like, oh shit, they beat them out. So it becomes this thing of now you have this idea of then that excitement and that kind of anticipation and that wanting to be better and that wanting to go up there and beat up the bullies. I think that's the same thing here, is you can have this idea of now with this, big ass Big 12 being able to go in there and say, hey, look, we can now establish ourselves through the momentum of this.
Yeah, I think it also too. I mean, you had so much of the national spotlight in 2022, right? And we saw just what that run and that attention did for the university as a whole, as far as increasing applications, making it impossible for students to get in, like having an acceptance rate that's like an Ivy League basically, because just the sheer volume of kids that saw that and said, I want to be a part of that. And it feels like the last 3 seasons you've fallen out of the national spotlight. The Big 12 is super competitive and really fun, but it doesn't have a flagship university that gets you the attention, far and wide. Like, look at what Texas Tech has had to do just to stay in the news. We've kind of been joking in the group chat about how they fumbled the opportunity to have a Heisman finalist because they just didn't know how to live on that stage. And TCU has been there. They were there in 2014. They were there at the beginning of 2015 before injuries, bit them, and they were there in 2022. But TCU doesn't carry the national weight with its football team like it has in the past. And so this is an opportunity. Even a USC team that's not what we think of when we think of USC football, much like it was in 1998, beating that team in a game that is a marquee bowl game, as marquee as these non-playoff games can be, against a great opponent with a coach on the other sideline that gets so much positive attention and so is talked about so much. I mean, I think that this absolutely can be that launching point, and not just for internally for the program, which Anthony, I think you said perfectly, like it's so huge for those players that are coming back, and it starts off spring ball on such a positive note. But as far as just announcing yourself again, I mean, look at what the last 2 Alamo Bowls did for TCU. Obviously 31-0 was a huge comeback. And then, they had another just really fun come from behind win against Stanford in an Alamo Bowl too. So this is a place where TCU has been successful, that they've played this game in a way that has gotten them a lot of positive attention. It's put them back on the national map football-wise. You have a great time slot. You have a great day to play that game. I think it's critically important. And the fact that those guys, those seniors and those guys getting ready to go to their pro careers are practicing like they're going to play, I think that there's part of that
excitement.
Get one more game on film by all means, but those guys wouldn't be playing if they didn't think it was important, not just for them personally, but for the university as a whole. So that game was so critical in my development as a TCU fan back in 1998. I've told the story often here of being 1-10 my freshman year and tearing down the goalposts for beating SMU, and that journey to that Sun Bowl win was so dramatic in just about 13 months time, and really a lot of the reason I'm still as tied to the university and I do all of this work and go to all these games now is because of how I felt when TCU won that game all those years ago. And so there's another generation of students that weren't here for 2022 and haven't seen the real excitement and the real joy about this program that have a chance to get bought into something special. And hopefully that carries into some real positive momentum next year.
To your point, just to pivot off of that generationally, let's talk about recruitment. I mean, USC right now is the number one recruiting class. That immediately brings national attention. It brings eyes to you. So you're going to have those recruits watching this game.
Yeah.
And as we said, let's pair that with the transfer portal. Now you have recruits watching this game and they're looking like, yeah, I'm going to play for USC. Like, who is that in purple? What are they doing? Okay. And so if you can set the tone and allow yourself to be successful in this game, successful in this bowl, you gain fans in San Antonio, right? That doesn't have kind of a marquee university. I'm from San Antonio, so no shots to San Antonio. UTSA is dope, but just saying.
And they already love TCU down there.
100%. They love TCU.
Yeah.
No, not because. Oh, no.
Oh, because they have Ty Summers. I mean,
okay. I'm just making sure.
Aaron Green. No.
No, but you we are so silly. You gain fans there. You like you said, you get national attention. You have these recruits all watching this game, and with all this attention on USC and this hope and excitement for next year because of the recruiting class they have, that does nothing but benefit TCU if they play well.
Mm-hmm. It does. Look, I think we talked about this last episode, Melissa, but Sonny said, in his initial phone call with the Alamo Bowl, they do like a little Zoom call with both coaches and all this other stuff. He looks at bowl games now as the first game of the next season, for maybe an opportunity for some youth to play, but really as that springboard that we talked about, because regardless of how we feel about the bowl system now, and it feels like it's a little bit at odds with what the college football playoff wants to do, and obviously, Notre Dame and Iowa State and Kansas State opting out of bowls this year has people kind of questioning what the future of bowl games looks like and all this other stuff. But for now, there is still an undeniable amount of momentum that you can carry forward once you win a game like this one.
Mm,
And Anthony, you got to TCU in 1999,
mm,
right after the Sun Bowl happened. And I had the chance to talk. I mentioned Landry Burdine earlier. I had a chance to talk to Landry last week. I was writing something for the TCU News that'll go up on Monday. But I just asked him, what did that, like, from your perspective, from a guy who was a captain on that team, what did that do for TCU football? And he said, we looked around the locker room, and for the first time after that football game, we saw all the guys that were coming back, and we felt like there was actually something that we could build on. Like, we could actually use this game to go and have success in 1999 and 2000 and so on. And so you were, as a guy that got there in 1999, was that a palpable feeling? Like, what was the
oh
locker
yeah.
room like when you showed up a couple months after that game?
It's as if when you go into a place and everybody's just kind of almost like military, like they just got issued all their new gear, right? The excitement was like that, where it's like you got this sense of like, this is the what we're establishing, and you start to see kind of the primordial ooze and like formation of like a big time program. And you could see it. I mean, even in my time there, the evolution of the weight room culture, of performance, and putting up numbers in the weight room, and the Iron Frogs and the Night of Champions and all those things that we used to do. All that stuff got established, as we went on, because we TCU was almost learning how to become this a powerhouse, how to become a team that is perennially in the top 25, a team that can handle being in the top 10, a team that can eventually go to the national championship. All of that starts back here after that win. And so when I got there, it was absolutely an exciting time. And I was told right off the bat, I knew the mentality. They told us right away that it's one of these things of like, no one's going to expect you to win. No one wants you to win. No one cares about you. Half of them don't even know who you are. The horny toads? Are you guys the toad? What are you? And then, after the time there, you knew who we were, and you knew what we brought. And if you came to play us, you knew you were in for a dogfight. And that's exactly what I was told. I was told that even if they win, they might be too beat up to win the next game, because that's what they did. And that's where, and we talked about this, all the sayings that I love so much, where it's like, we are all we need: mental toughness, extra effort, all of that toughness and that mentality is what it took to build the program from the ground up and eventually get to this point.
Melissa, you were there on campus while all of this was going on.
Yeah.
Was there a palpable feeling from the fan base? Like, did
Oh,
it radiate out from the football program to the
yeah.
university?
Yeah, I think it absolutely. I mean, you're asking me to go in the way back machine several concussions ago, too. But yeah, I mean, I will tell you that my freshman and sophomore year, it was plenty of good seats available, right? Like, we were required at my sorority to attend games, like in full sorority dress, which is such a hilarious thing to think about. Like, we were wearing black pants and like silk sweaters back in the day, and that was and our pins like was required. But I think when we came back that year, I mean, that's when you started to see LT really take off with his ability. It was, you absolutely saw more student engagement. I mean, TCU football, when my freshman, sophomore year, was not a critical event on campus. By my junior and senior year, especially with that LT season and him getting drafted, I think you started to see that stadium really fill up, and you started to see people buying into that program, and it becoming just a like appointment viewing. Like, that's what you did on Saturdays. It was
Mhm.
not what you did on Saturdays my first 2 year. And I think, Anthony, you could probably speak to that too as a player. Like, it was your first 2 years on campus, I can tell you, looked a lot different than my first 2 years on campus when it came to how people prioritized being around that football program, and
Mhm.
being invested. And it was kind of everyone wanted to jump on the bandwagon because you saw
Oh
there
my
was a
God.
potential for something special.
The plane. I mean, let's just go to the travel plane, right? when I first got there, the plane, like it was full. By the time I left, everybody was trying to get on that plane. We had to get a bigger plane because this alumni and this donor and this, and
Huh.
so like everybody wanted to be. And let's talk about the actual campus growing. Do you remember when they put up
Yeah.
that rec center,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's just, or the key card when it's like, now you use your student ID, you can
Yeah,
access everything. We go,
you
what?
didn't have to do
Hold on,
anything to get in
no,
previously. Like, yeah. And it
yeah,
just, I mean, Frog, you used to be able to park at Frog Fountain.
anything, yeah, you can park wherever you want.
Yeah, and like it's such a hard thing because football and athletics and the university kind of feel like three separate buckets.
Yeah, they
And
do.
TCU is certainly the university that it's become, and a big part to what the football program brung. And I know that there's a portion of the fan base it's like, give all the money to football, don't worry about expanding, don't worry about, but at the end of the day, like they're now, it's so symbiotic and they're feeding each other, and the rest of athletics is also a part of that too. And
Rising tide.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think Mike Buddie has spoken to that quite a bit as well, and that's why they continue to invest in baseball and continue to invest in women's basketball and continue to invest in women's soccer and volleyball and these other sports. Like, you can't eliminate the rest of the boat just have the whole or whatever. You need all of the pieces in order to keep that ship sailing, and football is a huge part of it. And in order for the university to have that profile, football probably needs to drive the bus. But we've seen soccer and volleyball and basketball really pick up some of the slack the last couple of years and keep TCU in the national spotlight in a very positive way, as football has kind of struggled to get its footing.
Absolutely. And again, you guys set things up so well here.
I was thinking that one for you. I was trying. I was helping.
Mike Buddie came out with his not quite monthly, not quite quarterly newsletter called
Buddy
the Buddy
feels
System.
like it. Yeah.
I mean, he's a busy man, so
Yeah.
we'll cut him some slack on the rhythm of his newsletter, but
kind of like the rhythm of our podcast. It's it
Listen,
is what it is.
crossover.
You'll get
season,
it when
guys.
you get it.
Yeah, you'll like it.
It's crossover season always for the athletic
Yeah,
director
true.
these days, and so he did come out with a newsletter called the Buddy System. He's been doing that for the last year since he started, kind of picking up the baton from the previous two ADs that would release kind of semi-regular newsletter kind of updates as well. But he had two notes that I thought were really important that TCU fans grab a hold of, and I'll link to this newsletter in the show notes as well. But first and foremost, he said explicitly and very clearly, I think he kind of put his finger on what a lot of TCU fans are feeling, and that is, hey, the Alamo Bowl is a great reward for a good season, and we're very excited to play in it. Our players are excited to play in it, but we also are fully aware that we did not meet expectations this year. And he called back to his stated goals for this season of reaching the Big 12 championship. He called back to Sonny Dykes' stated goals of reaching the Big 12 championship, and said, we fell short. And so we're going to take this opportunity to go and play in another football game, a game that we know and love against a really good opponent. But we also are approaching this game with the understanding that this is not where we want to be. And so I really appreciated him writing that. The graduate in me really appreciated him saying that, because it's what we've been talking about, Melissa, all season. And Anthony, what we talked about last time you came on the show was, we know there's another gear. We know there's another level out there for this program. And so the fact that he named that, I thought was really important, as he continues to kind of, introduce himself to the fan base. He hasn't even been here for a year. And it was just really good to, I think, come out and just say it as directly as possible, because it's what so many people were feeling.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes back to that trick that parents and coaches use, right? Where it's like, hey, I need you to do this. And then the person doesn't. It's like, oh, you messed up. Now I know you can do it. And, I think it's the same thing with our program. We know what we're capable of. We've been to the national championship. When you have a taste of that, anything less than that is good. It's not great. Anything that you have high expectations. And I think it's important that he address that. I think it's important that he let the fan base know, I get it. I know what you guys want, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We did a good job this year. It was a winning season. Let's not lose sight of that. We're going to a really good bowl, especially because it's in San Antonio. But that's at the end of the day, I think he did what a good leader would do and address the issues, but also keep in mind the positives and kind of making sure that he adjusts the mentality of the fan base so that we understand that this is a successful TCU team. It's not as successful as you'd like, but it is successful.
Well, I think it also tees up what you're going to talk about next, Jamie, really well from Mike's perspective too of, hey, we know what we expect. We know what you as the fan base expects. We saw what it took for the two teams that got there to get there. Now, if you want to get to that next level, like we're going to do our part, we're going to recognize that we're going to do our part. They make some changes, they do whatever, but we all know now that the next step is you need buy-in from the donors and you need buy-in locally from local businesses if you really want to be able to have the resources to win, which it's shown now you have to spend to win.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Texas Tech.
Yeah. And look, hey, we sat here all year and we talked about Texas Tech spending all this money and going out and getting guys in the portal. I mean, they built this monster of a defensive line exclusively out of portal players.
Who's being coached by Zarnell Finch.
Coach Z, who I adore.
You traitor. No, I'm just kidding.
But
how dare you, sir?
But it was so interesting to me. And as soon as I was able to pull up out of my own kind of stuckness with the Tech situation was, people are talking about Texas Tech so much differently than they're talking about the other teams who have similar budgets, whether it be Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or Penn State, and the $35 million they spent on that roster this year. God love them. But and the reason that the conversation was the way it was for Texas Tech is because I think subconscious thought from a national college football perspective is Texas Tech's not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to be able to do that. And so there was this layer of kind of disbelief that people approached Texas Tech with this year, not only because they went out and spent all that money, but because they had success doing it. Like, that's this day and age of college athletics. The big spenders are going to see the most results. And so not only did Mike Buddie address the missed expectations for TCU this year, he said, we know the blueprint to have more success. And that is revenue, rev share, right? Which TCU has already committed $20.5 million. It'll go up next year. It'll go up about 4% year over year. They're going to spend to the cap in rev share every single year. They did that this year.
As they should.
Check the box, right? But he also named very clearly, hey, that's not enough. There is an above the cap way to spend money, and that's what the most successful programs are doing. That's what we're going to have to do in order to get where we want to go. In order to meet those expectations we've stated for ourselves, we're going to have to fundraise above the cap through NIL, through third party opportunities for our student athletes. And I think the fact that he named Part A and then explicitly named Part B shows that he has an incredibly firm grasp of the situation and also understands that, hey, we don't have time to be coy about all of this, because there's a very short runway to 2030 or 2031 when the next great reshuffle is probably going to happen. And we have to be best positioned now to have success, to say, yeah, we can do this, and we can do this in this new model. Here's our track record of success. So I appreciated that. I thought it was really well done and well written. And now, like you said, Melissa, the onus is on the donors and the fan base to do what they need to do.
Jamie, great point. Great pin on that. You are leaving out the most important part of this newsletter, though. Mike Buddie gave us a little wordplay having to do with lighting at the Carter.
Yeah, they're getting LED lights in the Carter next year.
And I know
the worst kept secret of all time.
I know it doesn't impact winning or losing necessarily, but it's gonna look damn cool. And I'm sick of every other school's in-game stuff looking cooler than ours, and it's time that we leveled up. And so I am very excited. We see a little preview in basketball. Although the lights did go out during the women's basketball game randomly today, and it was awesome. It's like, oh, they shut the lights out, even though at the time we're shooting 20%, but whatever. But yeah, like that stuff matters, especially when you're paid what you're paid for tuition at TCU. I want shit to look cool.
Details.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's gonna look cool, and I'm excited, and we'll be able to see lighting with lots of running game, and offensive line play will be better accentuated by the fun lighting in the stadium.
I just think that Buddy could have saved a lot of room on that newsletter if he just put stripper mentality, money makes me move. Like, I just think that that would have been
The
the
amount of
way
money
to
I would
do it.
pay. Do you want to fundraise? Get Mike Buddy to say that as cameos and just charge $250. People would
Every time
line up because he is
your
the
budget will
least
be,
likely person to say that publicly. He's a very chill guy, but
oh my God.
I have really enjoyed getting to know
he's
Mike Buddy. There
snarky.
is no there's a better chance of I mean, like snowball's chance in hell, right? Like go into the snow room. There's a better chance of moving all the snow into the sauna and it lasting than
him
Mike
writing
Buddy
that.
saying something like that. But he, what it does indicate is I think what fans have kind of been hoping for with this offseason. We talked about the change at offensive coordinator and the details and how, hey, it's not a major program altering change that needs to happen, but there are some small things. And the investment in the transfer portal, the investment in high school recruiting is one of those small to medium sized things that needs to change a little bit, needs to shift if Sonny Dykes really wants to get this program to the next level. And so it does seem like he and Mike Buddy are on the same they're pulling in the same direction here, because one leads to the other, right? If you're gonna talk about needing all of this investment, then what we need to expect from this offseason, and what Mike Buddy mentioned in the Buddy system, was we're gonna be active in the portal.
Yeah.
Right, they've already started that, like you mentioned earlier, Anthony, with Noah McKinney, the guard transfer from Oklahoma State, who signed with TCU. There was a little bit of concern from fans. Oh, is he going to follow Kendal Briles to South Carolina? No, he's signed with TCU. He will be at TCU.
I mean, shoot, with this OC hire, you better stay. It'd be exciting for you.
Right, he's
be a
probably
lot of
one
fun.
of the most hyped people about this, I think. But they're going to be active in the transfer portal. They're going to go address the issues at offensive line because, like you mentioned, both of you, it's not just a scheme thing. It was an execution thing this year as well. You're going to have to replace a lot of guys, right? Eric McAllister's gone. Caleb Elarmsor is gone. Bud Clark is gone. Devin Deal is gone, right? You're losing a lot, especially on the defensive side of the football. You're going to have to go out and get some guys. And then we'll probably start to see the impacts of this above the cap fundraising as well for the 27 and 28 high school recruiting classes. So it does feel like things are starting to trend up. It really does. And I'm not necessarily one to always fully appreciate when momentum seems to be shifting in a good direction. I've been called a Debbie Downer before by people, but look, I think that it does really feel like the trains are on the track and they are moving in the right direction, and just a couple tweaks here and there are really going to get this thing rolling.
Like in 98?
Yeah.
Like in 1998.
Deja vu all over again.
Here we go.
Again. Well, friends, thank you so much. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Anthony,
for this episode.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Always a pleasure. We will work to get you back again. I know that our text back and forth was like, let's talk about some things. So offline here in just a sec, we can talk about some things. But Frog fans,
yeah, for sure,
let us know in the comments how much you appreciated Anthony on this episode.
And if you
or
felt
if you were like, enough
bloviated
of him.
too much.
Yeah. Did I blow? Oh, you got it. I love it.
I got it back in.
There you go. Comment bloviate.
And that's what we call a callback.
Exactly right. Comment bloviate, whether you listened on Apple or Spotify or you watched on the YouTube channel. Hit us with a bloviate in the comments. Folks, leave us a rating and a review. Share this episode with someone who hasn't listened to Frogs Insider yet so that they can become a Frogs Insider as well. We will be back before the Alamo Bowl. Melissa's got some preview stuff working. Anthony might be back again. Who knows what the schedule is going to look like, but you'll get more of us in your ears before December 30th. I can promise you that. But until then, we'll talk to you next time. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.